He used to have horses, and when the TS, what I was talking about, that organization that takes care of the farm and so on, TS, they came and they wanted to take his horses, and he rather let them loose. And he said he will rather let gypsies eat them than give it to them, to give it to the communists.
Ayu Petri dan Matt. Hai semuanya, apa kabar? Selamat datang di Ayu Petri dan Matt. Teman-teman, sudah banyak yang nanyain mana Ayah Matt, kenapa lama nggak kelihatan. Akhirnya Ayah Matt ada lagi di sini bersama kita, bisa meluangkan waktu sejenak. Jadi saya mau tanya-tanya tentang kehidupan di Hongaria zaman dulu waktu Ayah Matt masih kecil. Untuk teman-teman yang baru gabung pertama kali ini di channel ini, kenalin dulu, nama saya Ayu dan ini suami saya. Siapa namanya? Jolt. Kami tinggal di Budapest, Hongaria bersama anak kami Matt yang sekarang lagi main video game. Jadi untuk teman-teman mungkin banyak yang masih belum tahu, dulu setelah Perang Dunia II Hongaria dijajah Uni Soviet, masuk sebagai Blok Timur. Kalau zaman dulu istilahnya seperti itu. Mereka merupakan negara komunis. Kita hanya ngomong soal kehidupan zaman dulu saja waktu Ayah Matt masih kecil. When were you born?
1980.
1980, zaman dulu.
Yeah, different era.
Ya, jadi anak zaman sekarang di Hongaria kalau ditanya mungkin mereka nggak akan tahu gimana sih hidup orang di sini pada waktu itu gitu. Ayah Matt juga katanya sudah banyak yang lupa.
Yeah, don't remember much of my childhood.
Yeah.
Just trying to talk.
Yeah, everybody said you need to speak louder. So mikrofonnya ada di depan Ayah Matt, pasti sudah kenceng nih suaranya. Oke, saya sudah nyiapin beberapa pertanyaan, mungkin bisa mewakili keingintahuan teman-teman. Kalaupun masih ada pertanyaan lainnya nanti bisa ditanyakan di kolom komentar. When was communist era in Hungary?
As I said, I was born in 1980, and I was a kid back then, and Russians left in 1990, so I was 10-year-old when they left. So I really don't remember much. They called us the happiest barrack.
Among the Eastern Bloc?
Yes, because it wasn't that strong, wasn't that bad here, especially after 56.
I think people also don't know, so I will just explain first. Jadi tahun 1956 di sini ada revolusi anti komunis. Waktu itu orang sini ingin membebaskan diri dari penjajahan Uni Soviet, tapi kalah. Tentara Uni Soviet datang lagi, balik ke sini mengalahkan rakyat Hongaria. Jadi balik lagi, dijajah lagi gitu maksudnya. Jadi setelah itu mungkin mereka ingin lebih lunak, nggak terlalu hardcore komunis gitu ya, after 56.
Yeah. So we had a leader called Kadar. And I think he understood that if he's too strict, then that will happen again. He was a bit more lenient, and he tried to make sure people are satisfied enough to not fight against the system. To keep his power.
I understand. So when you were around in 1980, that was already the not so radical communism.
Around the 80s, it was already cracking. The system where they were already, it was already, weakened, and people just saw it's not working very well, and even the party was trying to save it. So one thing I remember is that, in communism you are not allowed to have private property or private business. You're not allowed to have private business. But they started to realize that people like to do job work, outside work as well, and they allowed it.
Contractor.
So, we called it as private sector, Mosek, Mogan sector.
Mogan sector.
Mogan sector,
I understand.
That became Mosek. I don't know, our door was broken or something, and then Grandma Nene would just go and ask her colleague to come and help us, and we would pay him for that. And
technically, it's
illegal. And of course, they didn't give him words and things like that. But the government was
just closing their eyes.
Yeah,
it's okay.
It's okay. It's better than people getting angry.
Because it's like peanuts. It's not a lot of money for them.
So, well, Mossack was quite big, but
Quite big.
Almost everyone did it.
Oh, there's no ownership of business. There's no ownership of shops. Even shops, supermarkets, everything were owned by the country, by the government.
Yep.
How about like houses? Did people own houses? You were
Honestly,
still small.
It's Nana who could answer these questions.
But Nana is...
I don't know. I don't know how that worked.
You don't know, yeah. We were still too
We
small.
also bought a house.
You own your own house.
Yeah,
Nana's house in Eger, it was your own house.
Well, actually,
Since-
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it
So
was our
everybody
house.
bought a
But
house.
even today, until today, there are houses which are owned by the town council, for example, and you can rent it from them.
Cheaper,
Or
probably.
I think there are also houses that you buy and you are not allowed to sell because they are like subsidized by the government or
To help
something
people.
like this. Yeah.
Mhm.
So you can turn money on them in theory. I don't know.
Yeah,
Honestly, I
it's
don't know.
okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. It's just that I think many people are also curious about it in Indonesia. We have no clue about it.
What I know is that, how do you call grandpa?
Kakek.
Kakek. Okay, what I heard from Kakek, so he just heard it at his workplace that somebody was selling a house.
Mm-hmm.
It was a brand new house, newly built. They haven't even moved in, and for some reason they were selling it, so we bought it from them. And
Is this the house?
in
in Eger?
Eger. And we got loan for that. I know that we had to take loan.
Government even gave loan.
Yes, from OTP, one of the biggest banks. So even back then it existed.
Oh,
We
okay.
got loan from them.
Was it true that there's no employment?
There's no unemployment.
Sorry, there's no unemployment. Yes, in socialist country.
Again, I was a kid, but so it's rather just the way I heard. Yes, that's what I heard, and that's one of the reasons why socialism wasn't that effective. So yes, as I understand, everyone had a job, even if they didn't have anything to do.
Then
So-
what did they do? Like just a title, like tukang or?
Yeah, but that's why it just wasn't efficient because, like, if a certain amount of work could be done by one person, but they hire 3 for it,
And the other two were
just to make sure everyone has
job.
work to do. That's how I understand it, but yeah, I never worked.
Yeah, back
I
then
don't
you
know.
were too young.
Yeah, but yeah, I think everyone had work and everyone had relatively decent salary, so they could live.
But
quite
then,
well.
how could the government afford paying all the workers?
So yeah, that was one issue. It just wasn't very efficient. Yeah, I don't know how they afford it. The socialist countries, we were like trading with each other, so they decided what a certain country will deal with. So, and I have no idea why, but they decided that Hungary will be a mining and factory country
You had
when we are
mines.
full of amazing lands for agriculture.
Oh.
I don't know why they decided that. So we had lots of mines and things like that, and we would export, I don't know, iron
And you didn't
coal
have
and
natural
things like
resources like that.
well, not really, not that much. So Hungary has always been famous for its lands. We will suddenly become a mining and factory country. Why?
By they is the Soviet Union, I suppose. Like they give
Yeah, I guess.
jobs
yes.
to each country to how to contribute.
Yes, so we never really belonged to Soviet Union, but for example, the Red Army was here. They stationed them here. So they were Russian soldiers here until 1990. I don't think I've seen that picture since I was a kid, or
Yeah.
I don't, or maybe it's just in my head. But I still remember when the last Russian, I think it was an officer, crossed the bridge and he left the country.
Oh.
That's still in my head. That picture when he's turning back, waving and leaving.
And did you
He
see
was the
like,
last person.
lots of Russians on the street back then when you were small? Or-
Well, you didn't see them in the street, but for example, I also had a friend who was, I think, the son of a Russian soldier.
In your school?
Yeah, he was my classmate. He was a nice guy.
Oh,
Yeah, he spoke Hungarian and
Hungarian.
everything. Yeah. So he was stationed here. So he brought his family as well.
But I don't know if you read it or you heard it from other people back then, because it's such a drastic change from democratic country in Second World War, and then suddenly you have to change the next day to communism. The government, which was ordered by the Soviet Union, I guess, told people, okay, from now on we are communist country, so you don't own shop. What happened to these shops that existed?
Well, that was way before my time.
Yeah, but maybe you
I
heard.
rather read about this
Yeah.
experienced it. So as I understand, after Second World War, actually there were elections.
Even
There were
during-
elections,
Oh.
but you know the Communist Party was backed by the Red Army,
Yes.
which was here.
Oh, okay.
So they did certain things to make sure they win.
Oh, right.
Let's
Yeah.
say so.
Okay.
So they won the elections, and I think that was probably the last election. I don't think that owning a shop or owning business was that common. Most people were farming.
Yeah,
Yes.
farmers.
Yes, that was a lot more common, especially in villages. Even cities weren't that big back then. So yeah, and really they literally just went to your house and told you that you have to give your land to us.
So it's
And if
claim.
not, then we'll beat you up. Or, yeah. I know that back then there was something called DS, Termelőszövetkezet. It's like an association or some kind of like a community, I'm not sure.
we'll Google it maybe.
I have no idea what the English translation would be. It sounds silly in English. So all the farmers had to give their land to this organization,
Yes.
and then the farmers would work for this organization and basically work on their own land, which used to be their own,
And now they
but
are.
it's not theirs anymore. Now they are workers on their own land.
Wow.
And
And did they get compensation money?
no, I mean, so it became like a business. So everyone gave their land, and then the people worked on those lands together. So there was no property anymore. You couldn't say that, oh, this is my part. It's not your part anymore. It's owned by the organization, and other people can come and, well, they shared the job, whatever had to be done, like in the factory or something.
Yeah.
It wasn't your property anymore.
But then for the land that they claimed, they didn't give like, oh, this was your land, the country will take it, will
No.
give you money. No, it's just
No,
gone.
absolutely
You get
not.
salary, that's all.
After the 90s, actually, they tried to compensate people. They gave tickets.
Tickets.
They called it ticket. Kárpótlási jegy. I think you had to prove that you own certain amount of land before socialism or communism, and then based on that you got these compensation tickets, and then you could use those tickets to buy land, or what some people did, and we did as well. They sold it. They sold the ticket to people who actually wanted to buy land. But because well, even the population has changed, a lot more people lived in cities.
Of course.
They didn't know what to do with land, so they just gave away the tickets. But because the tickets, there were so many tickets in the market, you know, if there's big supply, then the price drops. So very often they were sold at 20-30% of their value.
Oh, did grandma get some too?
She did, and then she sold it. I think around 30% value. So yeah, that was a big loss, and lots of people could make lots of money there, because if they had some cash to buy those tickets, they could buy them very cheap and then buy land on them, and yeah, just
Wow.
work on the land or sell the land later on or anything. It was good investment. Yeah, one funny story I heard from Keke.
Kakek.
I forgot the name. So he was saying that his parents, for example, had a nice house. I still remember it. Actually, I met them.
Your
my great
grandparents.
grandparents. Yeah, I remember I used to go to them. So they had a very long house, and then
Long, not big, but long, you said.
well, it's long. In my memory, yes, it's a very long house. Actually, houses are like that in villages. They're rather long.
Like in Skansen. It's
Yes,
long.
it's long. They are rather long.
And yeah, to go out, you need to go to the yard, to go to another room. right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Well, sometimes they're connected inside, but maybe not all the rooms. So yeah, sometimes you have to go outdoors to go from one to the other. So he had a very long house, and as I heard, what was the expression for rich farmers?
Kulak.
So they were often successful and relatively rich farmers
before this era.
Yes, and socialists, communists hated them. So he was like that too. So basically, they chopped his house into half, and he had to give half of the house to another family.
Just one day like that.
Yes. And yeah, the other story I heard, he used to have horses, and when the TS, what I was talking about, that organization that takes care of the farm and so on, TS, they came and they wanted to take his horses, and he rather let them loose. And he said he will rather let gypsies eat them than give it to them, to give it to the communists.
So your grandparents were rich back then, before communism?
Well, rich is relative. Rich is relative in that era. I mean, rich meant that maybe you had clothes and you had you had food every day. That was already rich.
Enough back then.
Or you had a big house.
And then suddenly they had to work on their own land as a tukang or
basically
something.
tukang on their own land.
Yeah. It's wow. Communism, socialism means equal life for everybody. Yeah. But then
the workers rule.
Yes. So do you think workers earn the same salary like doctors?
Well, of course no, I don't think so. Plus, even there was a hierarchy.
Oh, okay.
So, I'm sure politicians earn more. But I think back then, or at least in my head, and like I said, I was a kid back then, but in my head, I think nobody was really rich. Rich meant different thing than nowadays. It didn't necessarily mean money or big house or nice car or something. It rather meant privileges. Yeah, you had access to things that others didn't. Like maybe you could buy foreign food
currencies.
Or foreign clothes.
People were not supposed to buy foreign clothes or products.
Yes, but if you were rich or you
privilege.
had enough power, then you could get those things. Like you could get leather jacket from abroad, and that was a big thing to have leather jacket.
Wow.
Back then.
Hey, but grandma had luxurious car, Audi.
Yes, she had that because her
grandpa
lived in Canada, and when he came home, he gave $5,000. I think I always forget it.
The car cost that.
No, actually it cost less, but anyway, he gave dollars. And that was currency, that was devisa, we call it devisa.
Yeah,
it was foreign currency. So for that you could buy things that you couldn't buy for foreign, that you couldn't buy for local currency. So actually back then there were shops, like in the street there were shops where you could go and pay only with currency.
Like money changer?
No, it was a shop.
It was a shop.
You went in and, for example, you could buy Marlboro cigarette.
Which didn't exist.
I hope YouTube won't.
No, it's okay, Marlboro, we know that
censor
brand.
it. But yeah, so you could buy foreign cigarette that you couldn't buy in a Hungarian shop with foreign.
But using dollars,
yes,
you can.
with the foreign currency you could, or with Austrian shilling or.
Shilling?
Austrians had shilling, Germans had Deutschmark. Yes, Deutschmark.
But then, as somebody from Hungary, how could you earn foreign currencies?
Well, if you had a rich relative abroad,
like grandma,
then that was a nice way of earning currency. Grandpa also had some currency because he worked as a waiter in restaurant, and very often we had foreign visitors. The Germans loved coming here, and they left. They gave tip.
Their own money.
Currency. Yeah, so he collected that. And actually in the 80s he even worked in Austria. As I said, the system was also already cracking, and they allowed him to work in Austria, where he was paid in shilling. So yeah, you could get currency that way.
I remember my dad, he told me, so when you left the first time you came to Indonesia and then you left, you went back home. So Mbah Kong said that you are so lucky. If you are a few years older, you will never be allowed to come here.
I'm super lucky because it's like my generation, my year was pretty much the first in everything. Like, it's so funny, in school, my year was the first which didn't have to learn Russian.
So 1 year older?
I have a friend who is 1 year older and he had to learn Russian. I didn't.
So lucky.
I got to learn English instead of Russian. Also later on in school, they changed the school system, they changed the exams, and it was my year, was the first which had that new kind of system and so on.
It started to open.
Yeah, they started to change things. Yeah. So yeah, even if I'm a year older, then maybe I never learned English.
He told me, yeah. So Hungarian people are not supposed to go abroad. That's what he said.
Yes.
I didn't understand much.
Yes.
How did people choose their career?
I don't know. I think when you went to school, it was kind of decided.
Oh, because if you go to secretary school, you will become secretary.
So I think that's how Grandma also got her. Nana also got her job. That as soon as she graduated, she had a job. She was told, okay, you go to this place and you will work there. At the same time, Kakak was changing job a lot back then. I don't know,
He's lucky.
He changed every year, every few months. Sometimes he was called, like, you know, he had a friend, he had a colleague somewhere, and then they would call him like, oh, we need a waiter, don't you want to join us? Yeah, come here, and so on.
Networking.
Yeah, networking. Yeah, he knows lots of people.
Yeah, he's very outgoing. So even back then that helps to have lots of friends.
Oh, absolutely.
And then, could people watch entertainment from the West? American movies, American music?
No. No, for a very long time. I don't know when we first had we had foreign channels. So when we call it parabola antenna?
Antenna parabola in
one.
Indonesian.
So some people who could afford it did have that, and then they could watch foreign channels with that. Yeah, we didn't, so we couldn't.
You couldn't watch.
We never had that.
But people still knew, like Elvis Presley.
Well, from the
Beatles.
news, yes, some foreign news did get in the country. Yes, so we weren't completely closed like that, but
so it's not like North Korea nowadays.
No, it wasn't as strict, and yeah, even though the government always said that the Western is dying, nobody believed that. So we knew that things are much better abroad than here.
Oh, you were smarter than that.
Yeah, so nobody really believed it. So yeah, back then it was a huge thing to have something from abroad. Like I said, like having a nice clothes from abroad or having cigarette from abroad.
It's similar, like in Indonesia.
That was huge. That was huge. Yeah. Having a foreign car is unbelievable. In the 70s, that was really huge.
Then I said when she walked on the street, people would look at her because she drove nice car.
Well, I don't know. I guess back then, even just having a car probably was already like having a Mercedes, and having a foreign car was like having a Ferrari nowadays or Lamborghini. People would stare at you and so lucky.
Most people had Trabant.
Yes, or not even that. So actually back then, when you wanted to buy a car, you had to. There was one dealer, one government, Merkur. You had to go to them, and you could order your car, and usually you got it in a few years.
No, you have to wait
a few years.
No,
they will
hand make it.
Because again, they distributed the job. Who will do what? Like Skoda. Was in Czechoslovakia. Poland had Fiat.
Poland had Fiat?
Yeah, Polski Fiat. We call it Polski Fiat, Polish Fiat. They bought the license from Fiat. Oh. Actually, even the Russian Lada is based on Fiat. Oh. So they bought the license from Fiat. That's why it's very similar to the Fiat 125, something like this. Yeah, something like that. Not sure. So yeah, so only certain countries were manufacturing cars. We didn't, which meant that you had to wait for it. And these countries which made the cars had to supply for all the socialist countries. So they weren't able to produce enough. So yes, sometimes you had to wait for years until you could get a car.
So I bet every product was like that. So if you wanted to buy fridge, then a certain country will manufacture.
Fridge was, oh my goodness, I remember when, and you can find lots of pictures of this on Google, I'm sure. So when the borders opened, that was already at the end of 80s, early 90s, everyone went abroad to buy fridge.
Austria?
Yes, and the freezer, but the giant big freezers. You can see so many pictures that cars with fridge on the roof and in the back, and yeah, everyone was buying those fridges.
Before that?
I don't know. We had our local company again. We had Lahel, and actually we had a fridge, a Hungarian fridge, for like 40 years, and it worked fine.
Yeah.
It was perfectly fine, but for some reason people went crazy over fridges.
Oh, branded
I don't know why.
fridge.
We didn't have.
You didn't.
And we were also living quite far from the Austrian border, so we didn't go abroad.
Interesting.
What I did get though is around 87, 88. I did get a Commodore computer.
What is that?
Which was huge. Well,
is it Western or?
It's Western.
Oh, how could you?
I got a Commodore 16. So grandma knew somebody who did go abroad or could go abroad, and asked him to buy that computer for me for something like 8,000 or 10,000 forints.
That's expensive.
Even
now
it's
it's expensive.
And we had to get that from abroad as well, because you couldn't buy it in Hungary.
But they wouldn't catch you because they wouldn't arrest you because you own foreign Western.
Like I said, it was already cracking.
They closed their eyes again.
Yeah. It's like the border guards didn't care that much anymore. We didn't see anything. Yeah, you know, if you just gave them a bit of money, then they would close their eyes.
So basically, people didn't really support the idea of socialism so much. They prefer having democracy.
Yes, everyone wanted democracy. Even today, lots of people think that the system back then was better.
Nostalgia.
There is this, we call it Kádár nostalgia. Because, like we said, people had a job. Everyone had a job. They had a decent salary. They had a decent life. You didn't have to worry about your future. While in democracy, you know, what if I get fired tomorrow? Then I have to find a new job. What if nobody wants to hire me? And so on. So it's a lot more competitive. And I think people didn't understand it back then. And that's why now those who lived in that era kind of thinking that actually it wasn't that bad. At their level, actually it wasn't that horrible. My parents never really experienced that their lands were taken away or they had to give away their houses. It was their parents. So they rather saw the good side of it, not so much the bad side.
But then back then, after Second World War, were there many refugees? Like they didn't like it so much here, and then they went abroad or something like that.
Well, people tried to escape during Second World War just from the war. Many people went to America, especially America, Canada, Australia.
So not from the communism itself.
Yeah, from communism, people escaped in 1956.
1956.
So, as I heard, like close to 200,000 Hungarians went abroad.
That's quite a lot.
Well, it's a lot.
Yeah.
There were also people who did go abroad. After that, we call it dissidence. I don't know. They got permission to go abroad somehow, and they just never returned.
They enjoyed it so much.
To return. Well, they very often planned for it. It wasn't that easy, especially because you had to leave behind your family, and very often the family would get into trouble for what you did. The authority wouldn't be happy about that if that happened. But yeah, some people did that. They just went abroad and never returned.
Yeah.
I mean, people didn't even have a passport.
People didn't have passport.
Yes, so you needed special permission to get passport, and you needed a very good reason, like you were a sportsman or something, or you were
a spy. I don't know. Were there spies? There should be. Yeah.
So yeah, it was rare to have a passport.
Were there like ruthless soldiers?
Yeah, so that was the big problem in '56, that the system was very, very harsh.
Before '56.
They would arrest lots of people, and you could get executed for ridiculous reasons. I remember that one very famous thing is called Rečk, which was a
concentration camp.
Well, we can go. Yeah, many people died there. Yes. So, but after '56, we didn't have such things.
You didn't. So yeah, you never experienced this kind of things. Yeah.
I think actually no, they closed it after Stalin's death.
When was that?
53.
Oh, 53. Oh, then these kind of things also caused 1956 revolution, maybe.
Yeah, people
they didn't like it.
Yeah, people just weren't satisfied.
Iyalah, namanya ditindas, dijajah gitu ya teman-teman. Jadi gitu, kalau untuk yang hal-hal yang berbau politik, teman-teman bisa Google sendiri apa yang terjadi pada waktu itu. I think everywhere in Eastern Bloc it was similar situation, no?
Yeah, I think so. And like I said, they always called us the happiest barrack.
So this is the best place you could be.
Yeah, out of those.
Jadi terima kasih untuk teman-teman yang sudah menonton. Semoga bermanfaat. Sampai ketemu di video berikutnya. Bye.